It's a pleasure to meet in person after a year of virtual events. On behalf of organizers, India Trade Promotion Organization and Exhibitions India Group, we wish you a safe and valuable networking conference. We will start with our first session on waste management in India, now and the future. I would request our moderator for the session, Mr. Ashish Sachdeva, founder, president, Green Dream founder. Sir, can we have you up on the stage, please? I would also request our distinguished speakers to join us. Ms. Shalini Goyal Bhalla, Advisor, Sustainability and Circular Economy. Dr. Abhinav Akhilesh, Director, Human and Social Services, KPMG in India. Mr. Ujjwal Desai, Managing Director, Lucro Plastic Cycle Private Limited. Dr. Banish Desai, Recycle Man of India. I think Dr. Ashok Kumar is also supposed to join us, but he's stuck somewhere, so we'll let him join later. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Sachdeva. Thank you.
So, welcome to the first panel discussion for today. And today happens to be the third day of the Smart Cities India Expo. And out of the entire 3 days, I've been a part of various panel discussions, and this is the most interesting session that I personally look forward to for a variety of reasons, because today we are going to talk about something that we are surrounded by, which is waste. And we're not only going to just talk about the issues, we're going to talk about the action, we're going to talk about solutions, and that's why we have solution makers, policy makers, people who are driving change on the ground as a part of the panel discussion with us today. We were supposed to have 2 panel discussions this morning. One was on disposable plastic waste, now and the future, alignment to the Sustainable Development Goals and circular economy, and the second was the integrated waste management. So what we have done is we've integrated these 2 sessions. We'll run the discussion for around 90 minutes, and along with all the speakers that we have with us today. So before I move on to the introduction, there are a few things that I would like to share with all of you for the benefit of a larger audience watching this right now, and whosoever watched the recording or watching this live on social media. Disposable plastic waste. The biggest issue creator of these 3 words is the word disposable, not plastic or waste. Because we have this mindset of things being disposable and this attitude of single use, that is the problem. We say that time and again. It's not the material, whatever material you use, whether it's plastic, paper, or any new material that comes up tomorrow, if our attitude is single use, if our culture is single use, it's going to create a problem, because then you're creating pressure on the natural resources. So that culture of single use needs to go away, number one. And disposable also refers to this concept of a linear economy, and we must transition to circular economy, which my fellow speakers will talk about in detail. Before I move on to talk about, we all know this plastic problem. Plastic ko leke, we all have been so much sensitized. There's so many campaigns, social media, even the government agencies talking about it. But what is it? Is it just the plastic that is the problem, or the all kinds of waste material? So let's quickly watch a video first. I'll request the first video to be played with the right amount of volume so people can hear it well.
Go on. Dive in. Forget about it. Think about thriving. At least for a bit. There are good sides to it. Don't despair. It lasts forever. and everywhere. It's light. Everything's fine. No bother. Think about the earth. The wind. And the water. Don't be silly. It's not our duty. So we better quietly enjoy this. Beauty.
So what you saw in the video, we didn't see just plastic, right? We see all kind of waste material getting in there. It's a ironical depiction of what if the pollution itself adapts to the sea and becomes a live creature. But the message behind that is very, very clear. The Beauty, the name of this documentary made by an artist in Germany, is a result of linear economy, wherein we just want to consume, just take, make, and dispose it. After its consumer life is over. In this video, you could see sneakers, rubber, tires, textile, and another reason of the leakage is also the value of the post-consumer material. So let's understand. Take an example. Think about a plastic bag or a plastic straw being thrown on the road, and think about maybe an aluminum can thrown on the road. The aluminum can is going to vanish within like 15 minutes. Why? Because the informal waste picker knows its value. It's not a can. It's a valuable material for him lying on the road. He's going to pick it up, make money out of it because it's going to a recycler, right? Same is the case with PET bottles. But the low-grade plastic, the plastic packaging that we hear about, the multi-layered plastic, that is what is creating a major issue. So here, while we also want to talk about plastic in detail and the solutions related to it, the thing is, when that particular thing carries a recycling value, it is not going to be found in landfills and is not going to leak into our oceans, because that is money for someone, that is a resource for someone. So that's the kind of mindset that we need to change, because right before this discussion, we all were discussing that it's the education, it's the mindset, which is the first thing that needs to be changed if we want to change what's happening to our oceans. Good quality plastic, you see this, we basically get almost everything in plastic packaging or a different kind of packaging, but mainly plastic. You will see things getting, whether you get detergents, whether you get cleaners, whether you get sanitizer bottles, these are all coming in plastic. But that's good quality plastic which carries a recycling value and has high demand in the collection as well as the recycling industry. On the other hand, circular economy is a regenerative design and aims to decouple growth from consumption of infinite resources. So let's understand, obviously all our economies globally are based on the concept of growth. That's what we also knew when what happened during the COVID-19 crisis. It was the growth that was being impacted, which impacted people, which impacted money, which impacted economies, jobs, everything. So the growth has to happen, but growth has to be decoupled from the fact that we are going to consume resources infinitely. We need to regenerate the resources, we need to consume them into the cycle again, so that the dependency on the new or virgin resources goes down significantly. The transition from linear to circular economy will create benefits on the triple bottom line. So let me explain quickly what is the triple bottom line when it creates benefits socially, environmentally, and economically. If we are going to transition, so let's take an example. It will create jobs. There will be reduced load on the virgin material, so it is environment friendly. And it is also going to, eventually, there will be less cost of procuring the raw material for the industries, because they're recycling the content and they're not looking for virgin or fresh content. What I see as the way forward for solving the plastic waste crisis, or overall the issues related to the current ways of operating the linear economy that we live in, I think we firstly need to relook at the design of the things. Our supply chains need to be reassessed, rethought from the basis of that whatever is being produced has to be, we need to think in advance what's going to happen to it after the consumer has consumed it. Is that material going to get recycled? See, that's the problem. Plastic was a wonderful invention, they say. But we never thought about its recycling from point one. We are only in this decade, the 21st year of the 21st century, the aggression on plastic recycling has started to come in. It's never too late. So, I definitely want to be very, very hopeful about where we're heading. In the way forward, the next big step is going to be planning for things to be recycled, planning for things to be as a raw material for the another industry, and for all of these steps to be integrated. So see, they're policy makers, they're solution makers, they're people working on the ground, they're entrepreneurs, they're government bodies. If they all continue to work in silos, we are not going to solve this problem. We need to make sure they all come together, put in an integrated effort to solve this problem. There's some more thoughts, but I think I'll bring that later in the presentation. For now, I'll quickly move on to each one of our speakers first to give a quick intro about what you guys are doing. We'll start with Dr. Binish Desai, who's also called the Recycling Man of India, and rightly said, because he started working on these initiatives of recycling since he was age 10, I came to know today. And so after, you have to start early to make it big. So let's hear it out from Binish. You can either speak from there or here, whatever you're comfortable with.
I think I'll just speak
Okay,
from
great.
Hello. Yeah, hi, good morning everyone. I'm Dr. Binish Desai, also known as the Recycle Man of India. As it's rightly said, it comes with responsibility, absolutely. So what I do is, we convert waste into eco-economical and social innovations. It's very important when I say these words, because there is so much of things going out there, but very few that are becoming majoritarily recyclable. The reason is it's not commercially recyclable. So a lot of waste out there, we have solutions to it, but we do not have commercial solutions to it, and that's very important. For that, we need to understand the real recycling, right? Waste is a man-made concept that didn't exist in the past. It is a human consumption that has created it. So in nature, waste does not exist. If you go see around, observe, it does not exist. So it becomes our responsibility. Majoritarily, what we are doing is either incinerating it or landfilling it. That's a result of linear economy. Currently, right now, if someone asks me where are we are right now somewhat in between linear and circular economy. We are in the recycling economy, where initially it was said that waste, the good value waste is being recycled, but the low grade waste is just ending up in the landfills. And that all those low grade waste which were actually useless, that's what the definition of waste, something that is useless, we are converting them into products. We create houses, we have more than 150 products from 70 plus different types of waste. And the most recent one being is the PPE waste that has been generated during the COVID-19. So we recycle all the face masks into bricks which are stronger than the conventional brick. We have brought down the cost of construction by nearly 40%. And these are the brick 2.0. The initial bricks were made from the paper waste that comes from the paper mills. And that is something that we do, and I'm going to discuss further, and I'll pass the introduction to my next panelist.
That was quick, like the way you quickly are recycling the different products. So we'd love to hear more about it later in the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just...
For now, I'll request Dr. Abhinav Akhilesh, who's a Director for Human and Social Services, KPMG in India, to share his thoughts with us, because we were having a chat earlier this morning, and he gave some really insightful thoughts about from the government perspective and the projects that they've been doing in tie-up with the government bodies. So please, over to you, Abhinav.
Thanks. Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Abhinav. I'm a director with KPMG, and I lead our sanitation and waste management practice. And primarily, we work with governments at the central, state, and now increasingly at the local government level. And what we try and do is partner with governments to see how we can enable the change that's happening. And I use the word enable very, very deliberately because I very, very honestly believe that if this sector or if the problem of waste is going to get managed in this country, it has to be private sector led, people led, and government has to have an enabling role in it. And also, another thing that we are doing is some of the newer areas which are emerging, such as marine waste, riverine waste, things like innovative uses of plastics through downcycling or recycling. We are working with quite a few international organizations and funders, not in terms of technology, but what could be the policy framework for it, what could be the market framework look like, and increasingly also working in implementing digital solutions to basically make the entire value chain more cost effective and more efficient. So that's what we are working with right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Abhinav. I'll have a few questions for you, but after the first round of introductions, we'll move on to that. I'll now request Ms. Shalini Goel Bhalla, who's the founder for ICCE, and also doing a lot of sustainability projects and circularity projects. So I'll request her to please share about her initiatives.
Thank you, Ashish. I'm Shalini, and I founded International Council for Circular Economy in 2020, which is a very recent organization. I was working in sustainability for last almost 10 years when I realized that, and a couple of projects in last 3 years I've been working on circularity. Designing circular products for European entities was something that I was into. And I saw that while I was working on these projects in Europe, India had a lot of scope when we were talking about waste, and with Swachh Bharat mission coming up, waste became a hot topic in 2014, and I saw a lot of awareness amongst people to start segregating their waste. We are very far away from reaching our goal, but the momentum started to build up. And that is when I thought the concept of circular economy should also be introduced in India. That is when I started writing my book, which became the first book in India by an Indian author. And then along with it, we started establishing this council, which is working only on the concept of circular economy and how India, when I talk about India, I talk about all the levels at the consumer level, at the corporate level, how industry could change, and at the government level, and how could policies support circular growth, is something that the council focuses on. But at the same time, we believe that awareness amongst the consumers and awareness amongst the entrepreneurs who are budding is the most important thing, and that is where council plays an extremely important role. So what we are doing right now is we started with the certified courses. These courses happen to be the first certified courses in circular economy in India. And we also have launched several initiatives with colleges where we are promoting the entrepreneurs to come up with circular business models. Personally, I've been involved with a lot of corporate sector in helping them design their products circular from the beginning. So there I believe when a company is launching its product, what is happening currently is we are thinking how to sell the product. So the basic fundamental on the mind of corporates is to build such a product that will sell, and how can we market the product. But where we come in, we also help them think about what will happen at the end of life cycle of the product. So this kind of thinking is new because in India, right now we do not have legislation, don't have these polluters pay principle, where the producer starts thinking about what will happen to their product at the end of life cycle. But that is what is circular economy. Circular economy talks about building that thinking right from the beginning, and that is what I have been working with corporates and the industry sector. I think I can share more while we go on, Ashish. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Shalini. And I was personally very excited to learn when I read about the courses right before this panel discussion as well. I think formal education and formal courses in this field are the need of the hour, and everyone on this panel is has agreed to that fact. So we would love to collaborate with you, because all of these places that we work with, I think, need of formal education in the field of circular economy. We see that there's a lot of awareness being created by foundations like Ellen MacArthur, where the entire concept came from. But it's good to see that serious people are getting into this from an education perspective as well. So thank you so much. I'll now request Mr. Ujjwal Desai, who's come all the way from Gujarat, is the MD of Lucro Plasticycle, and he's got an innovation to talk about which solves a very big problem for the people who are working in the field of waste management. And personally, it's a big relief for me, because I know I'm going to reach out to me and he will have to help me, because I'm the moderator for the session. So Ujjwal, over to you.
Thank you. So I'm the co-founder of Lucro Plasticycle Private Limited, and we are a integrated plastic waste management company. We collect plastic waste. We have our own collection centers. We do segregation, we do recycling, and we make products. Currently, we have large number of corporates both in India and abroad who are using recycled products in their packaging. So circular economy has already started. It's not yet come large into the limelight, but companies have started thinking about it, and that's what we are helping them do. We are setting up one of India's largest single roof plastic waste recycling facility in Gujarat, where we would be processing post-consumer plastic that comes from households, that comes from municipalities, and basically making products from this type of plastic. So our approach is very clear. We work with waste. We are working with plastic waste, both MLP as well as regular flexible plastic, and we are making products, and all of this is done by us as an integrated approach. So which is what is helping drive circular economy. That is one of the biggest factors today in India or globally, where people have a challenge of using waste, and we are trying to show people how we can use plastic waste as a resource rather than a scourge. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ujjwal. We have one more speaker. I think he'll be joining us in another 5 minutes. Mr. Ashok, who's the founder of and MD of Greenscape Eco. They're working in the field of electronic waste. I thought it will be good to talk about that as well. So he should be here any moment. But in the meantime, we'll go ahead with some questions that I've also put down, relevant to the domains that you all are working in. And before that, so that why I'm asking these questions and my questions sound relevant, I'll show you a quick video of what we have been doing as well at Green Dream Foundation. So I'll request the second video to be played.
Spread mass awareness, advocate, engage, and drive action among people, organizations, and government agencies. United by a vision, a genuine concern to save the planet, GDF works on key environmental themes like waste management, water security, climate change, air pollution, and high-impact initiatives. Values such as ethics, innovation, excellence, and solution-oriented approach are at the core of each initiative. Ashish Sachdeva, the founder of GDF, driven by an extraordinary dream to create a clean and green planet, created the organization to work towards protection, conservation, and betterment of environment, Mother Nature, and humanity. For the past 10 years, we at the Green Dream Foundation have been working to make your dream come true. Your dream of living in a cleaner and greener world. Over the last few years, we have helped informal waste pickers, senior citizens, and the specially abled during the COVID-19 pandemic. In 2019, Ecothon, our flagship event, became one of India's most acclaimed initiatives. We also launched the Mansagar Lake Cleanup in Jaipur, through which we successfully eliminated 1.5 tons of trash only in one cleanup drive. and around 500 tons of waste diverted from landfills over the last 3 years. It has now become a people's movement to revive their local water bodies. We also led initiatives for waste segregation at source in various cities, including Noida, Saharanpur, Hisar, Chandigarh and Solan, through which we aim to propagate sustainable waste management. There's still a long way to go, but often a long journey starts with one step and one hand that volunteers. Thanks to each one of you who has supported us in our efforts of healing our planet and making us what we are today. Now, we are a community of over 100,000 global citizens carving out a path for a better world. This blue planet that is our abode, and we are accountable to the future generations. We must work today to create a better tomorrow. Let's hold each other's hands and embody this dream of green planet.
Hello. Thank you so much, everyone. And thanks for the introduction by all the speakers. I have put down a lot of relevant questions. And now that we've spoken a bit about plastic waste, circular economy, and the solution makers on our side, I also want to bring in the angle of the integrated solid waste management concept. So what does integrated look like? Integrated is something, when we're talking about all the steps involved in the waste management chain. So we're talking about awareness, which is IEC. We're talking about collection. We're talking about transportation. And we're also talking about resource recovery or recycling, like we say it. And the triple bottom line approach is something which is going to change the game for India's waste crisis. Obviously, not just in Delhi, Delhi's landfills have become very unpopular, but such landfills are coming up across the country. We all know that. And we also know that a lot of companies are working in bioremediation and also getting rid of those landfills. But my question is, we should not have those landfills at first place. There should not be any waste going to the landfills at first place. And zero waste to landfill should be the strategy or the ideology. We should not be sending any waste to landfills. We have Dr. Ashok who has joined us. Sir, please join us. He's the Vice Chairman for Greenscape Eco. So please have a seat. I'll come back to you shortly. See, waste is something that, we are surrounded by it, we are contributing to it, and we are impacted by it. Yet it does not get the desired attention that we should be giving to the issue of waste management. A very good moment that has happened over the last few years since the Swachh Bharat mission was launched, that waste management as a serious topic is being talked about. मतलब पहले कचरे की बात सिर्फ कूड़े वाले करते थे, और वो कूड़े वाले नहीं, वो सफाई वाले हैं, because they're actually cleaning your city. So वो कूड़े वाले नहीं है, कूड़े वाले तो हम हैं, because we are the ones who generate all the kooda. They are the safai walas, right? So apart from them, there's a lot of formal effort going into it, and right here is the example. There are innovations, there are organizations, there are serious consultancies, and serious organizations like KPMG getting into these domains tells you that this situation is about to get the desired attention. It's going to get solved at one point. One thing interesting about SBM 2.0 that you must have heard about that was announced recently is there's going to be significant focus on waste segregation. And I think that is the most important step in doing whatever all of you are trying to do. Because if the waste gets mixed, it does not carry any value. But if we get segregated waste, if all the recyclers have access to segregated waste, then they can create businesses out of it. They can create jobs out of it. They can create livelihoods out of it. So, like you saw in the video, me and my team, one of my team members is also here who's leading the initiative in a couple of cities for us, driving waste segregation on the ground. It's easy to talk about it. It's easy to idealize it. It's easy to strategize it. But implementing on the ground is the most difficult job. Because when you go door to door educating people every day, you get different kind of responses. They're like, I pay you 50 rupees a month, so why should I segregate? That's your job. And a lot of people are cooperative. So you meet all kinds of people, all kinds of personalities, and taking that waste segregation up from 40 to 90% in just 5 months in Hisar and Haryana, is something that we are really proud of. But you know what? We should not be so proud that we, kind of back off from those efforts, because they need consistent reminders, they need consistent education efforts, and that's what we need to work on if we really want to make waste management and waste segregation a culture. It was not in our culture to segregate waste. Let's understand that. The government, the municipalities, the NGOs, the organizations are asking you to do something which your generation has never done before. But the upcoming younger generations are already more aware than you. That's the good news. That's the relief. They already carry the wrappers in their pockets because they know they cannot dispose it off in open. They don't roll down the windows of their cars and throw out the waste in open because they want their cities to be clean. This is the generation that understands. When you go to Singapore, you do not have the audacity to throw something on the road. But here in India, right outside the gates of Pragati Maidan, you have the audacity to do it. Why? So I think it's a mindset change that needs to be brought in to start with. And it starts with education, awareness, and driving waste segregation. There are a few other red flags in this entire domain that I'll talk about later. I have a huge list of points to talk about, so I'll limit myself now. And now I'll firstly pose the first question to the panel, and it is open for any of you to take it up. What is the key to drive waste segregation apart from IEC? So I've spoken about information, education, communication as a very important factor to drive successful waste management. What do you think is another key factor, or what are the other key factors to drive segregation of waste at source? What could be the other things? Anyone can take it up.
So if you see in India, right, every household keeps newspapers. Why? Because there's some value attached to newspapers. Similarly, if we can do that with plastic, if we can derive more value out of the waste and we can give it to the owner of the plastic waste, that automatically drives segregation. Because today what happens is people do not know the value that is attached with plastic waste, and that's why it's all thrown around. If we start deriving more value out of the waste, automatically there will be a value created in the value chain, and the owner of the waste who is throwing it away will actually start keeping it with themselves and disposing it off in a proper manner.
That's a very good point. Attach value to it and it will be picked up like all other waste material that currently gets picked up. Anything else that you guys want to add?
Yeah, Ashish, I think what he said, I would say incentivizing is something, yes. Also is technology. I saw, I'll quote one example in Gurgaon. So my parents are 60 plus, and I thought teaching them segregation will be very difficult. So when I started talking about, like we talk about segregation, the wet waste and dry waste, they wouldn't understand. But what happened, I realized after 2 months when I went back and I saw they were already segregating, and how that happened is a very good example. Maybe a lot of other cities could replicate it. What was happening was there was an organization which came, they delivered some bags to them. They said, okay, these 12 bags we will collect from you every week. And what all items it could have, they listed on a piece of paper. So they said cardboard boxes, your bottles, your paper, your any electronic item, you could put in that. And now what they did was they would come, they would say that we are here this Saturday and we will collect that bag. So they had these bags, even they didn't have to use any other bag, plastic bag. So they came, they collected, the waste went, they segregated the waste, and then this app which they had installed on these all flat owners listed how much paper, how much cardboard, how much electronic item, be it 5 rupees at the end of it, be it 10 rupees, 70 rupees, whatever, according to your waste. But then it became a kind of an incentivizing model. Also, along with that was the ease of doing it. So they didn't have to actually move out of their houses. And what I could not do, this technology, that ease of doing the segregation helped them to segregate. And now their wet waste is completely 100% segregated from all other waste. So I think technology and ease of separation along with incentivizing is a wonderful model that would work.
Completely agree with you. Binish, you also want to add something?
So basically I also believe that incentivization absolutely is the point. Technology also has to be in there. But I also see that we should go back to our roots, because the actual problem that happens, the reason why waste exists is because we have forgotten the roots. Over the years, materials have become more complex, and that's the reason why waste is being generated. When we put that in perspective and we see from an Indian side, then I would say our moms are the biggest recyclers. Because apna sabka favorite pocha, favorite t-shirt would have become a pocha the moment it's toned down. So we have somewhere, jugaad is in our culture. We just need to bring the right information to them, maintaining a transparency in this entire system where they know where their waste is going. Most of us out here do not understand where exactly it's ending up in. For example, newspapers, right? We think Raddi wale le gaye, it is getting recycled. So we are okay, we did our part. But we don't ask the question what happens after that Raddi wala takes it. So it goes back to the paper mills. Only 40 to 60% of your paper becomes brand new paper again. The rest is actually end up in the landfills, and there are solutions out there. So when we incentivize, we could actually create an entire model where even the end products could be actually given on a subsidized rate to the person who actually owns the waste. So that will help them create a credit-based barter system as well. And that's something I feel that can be incorporated with the new innovations that are coming up, which are commercially viable.
Rightly said, Manish. A lot of times I say and tell people that sustainability is not a thing that we need to learn from the West. Learn it from your past, right? Because we were truly practicing it in all senses. We are getting back to the roots already, and because that's where the real solution lies. So thanks for pointing that out. And before I move on to a next question, because Dr. Ashok has just joined in, I'll request Dr. Ashok to kindly, everyone has given introductions about their respective initiatives. And Dr. Ashok's company, Greenscape Eco Management Private Limited, is working in the space of electronic waste, which was recently touched upon. So, sir, I will request you to kindly introduce your initiative to all of us, please.
Good morning to all, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. And you understand what is the e-waste. We are the pioneer in bringing the e-waste recycling in this country in 2007. When there was no regulation, there was no law, and it was when we started the company in 2007, we got only 2 laptops and 1 monitor the first day. And after that, the journey has gone in a big way, and we have started collecting and processing and recycling to the extent of 30,000 metric ton per annum. And thanks to the Government of India and to the Honorable Prime Minister that he has brought lot of initiatives in the field of waste management, whether it is solid waste, whether it is plastic waste, whether it is lithium batteries now, and the electronic waste. Electronic waste is a huge problem for this country because 1.3 billion people are using at least 2 gadgets, and you can understand how much quantity it can be in the kgs, and it's more than 2 million tons we produce and generate electronic waste. To collect, to segregate, and to process, and to recycle, and to do these all scientifical way of doing is a very tough job. The government's initiatives have been tremendous. The law is in place, and the EPR, which is called Extended Producer Responsibility, is also in place, which will help a lot to the producers. Suppose if you buy a washing machine or a refrigerator or a television or air conditioner, what to do when it has become end of life? Either you sell it to the kabadi or it goes to some other people who can refurbish it. So as far as the refurbishing is concerned, it's fine that you are increasing the life of this product. But at the same time, suppose if it is going into the hands of the people who do not know what to do as far as the recycling is concerned, what is going to happen? It has so many components, so many hazardous waste. If it goes into the earth, our future children will be hampered and they will be having a lot of disease. Today you will see that in Muradabad, in Krishan Vihar, in Mustafabad, in Seelampur, what is happening? All these informal sector people have engaged their children to do and take out the small parts out of the laptop because there is a value in it. This resource is very, very important for this country. So therefore, the recycling has to take place in a more environment sound manner. We do not say that the informal sector should not be involved. They should be involved. They are the biggest collection points, or you can say they are the best systems to collect the material from the household, from the individuals, even one equipment. They can take it to the collection center. And once that has been collected, we are engaging all these, I will not say the kabadis, I always say they are the people who are helping to recycle the equipments. So we are also involving all these people through the NGOs like Green, and also through the other in a lot of cities. So the smart cities impact will only happen when all the waste generated or the end of life products are being recycled in a proper manner, so that it does not damage the health of our human beings, which is very important. Apart from this, there is a law which has come in 2016, so I just want to touch upon that. That law says that whosoever is producing this product, what is happening, that when we import the parts or like air conditioning motors or the laptops which are coming and assembled in India, the hazardous waste is coming from China, from other nations. So we have to take care of that. So therefore, the government of India in 2016 has brought the law that every producer has to make sure that the recycling of their products on the basis of the targets which are fixed. In the year 2017, it was 20%, now it is 50% of the products which they have produced. And they have to make sure that in the years to come, they have to reduce the hazardous waste inside their products. So they have to do a lot of R&D. Suppose today the LG produces a lot of refrigerators. They are the largest producers of the refrigerators in India. Similarly, the Samsung, the Havells, all these products has so many components which are resource. At the same time, there are certain hazardous materials like PCB. Printed circuit boards has a lot of hazardous material in it. So that the batteries has so many lead, other metals which can be reused, but if it is put in the earth, it can create problem. So this EPR has really brought a very, very good for the recyclers, because they are being compensated for their recycling deficit. So all these things are happening, and I am sure under the leadership of Honorable Prime Minister, this is going to be very good for this country if the recycling takes place as early as possible. The government has now brought 11 committees which are taking care for linear economy to the circular economy. That contains plastic waste and also lithium batteries, vehicle scrapping policy, and also e-waste and the solid waste. All these are being designated to the various ministries, and they have appointed committees to look into it so that this menace of the waste is properly handled. So the time has come for the awareness. The people like Ashish, who is taking so much efforts in bringing the waste and collecting the waste in a proper manner, and plus he has also taken initiatives to put the awareness in the common people that anything which has end of life should be brought back to the nation's resource. It should not be wasted. The waste is really waste unless and until it is put back to into the again recycling framework. So it is very important that we all have together take the pledge that whatever we have, we should go and give it to the proper recyclers who are doing recycling. The solid waste is entirely different. The lithium batteries, lead acid batteries, or the electronic waste or the consumer durables has to be recycled in a very environment manner. The CPCB, the MOEF are taken a lot of initiatives towards this. And you will be surprised that in the last 3 years, more than 411 companies have come for recycling, and approximately 1.1 million tons capacity has been developed in this country. But it is still less, because we are generating 2 million last year. In 2022, it will be 3 million tons, and by 2025, 5 million tons, because every person will have now which are having 2 gadgets will go to 5 gadgets, because everything is going digital, and the waste generation has to be properly recycled. So the things are moving in the right direction, and the support of the common people and the general public and the awareness, like companies like Ashish, has to come forward in a great way. So I would like to touch upon the world scenario of the electronic waste. The worldwide electronic waste is being generated to the extent of 53 million tons. That was the figure of the United Nations for the 2020. So now this is going to be a huge jump shortly, because everybody wants to use the digital things. And in India, you will be surprised that how much our earth can give it back to us. In 1970, we used to take out to the extent of 1.94 billion tons of the metals out of metals, fuels and everything. Now, if this is the same things goes on in 2025, we'll be having a 15 billion metric ton of metals to be taken out from this Mother Earth, which is a huge quantity. So what to do? Either we recycle or keep on putting a pressure on our natural resources. The rare earths, we will be taking it out. One day will come, we will not be able to produce the PCB, will not be able to have the semiconductors, which are very important for our space, for our day-to-day affairs. Suppose if you don't have a good PCB or the sensor, you will have a problem. Then you have to import it, whether it is China or Taiwan. Taiwan produces very good quality of PCB. So our dependency on the world has to come down. The pandemic has shown us that unless and until we have everything in our country, we will be taken and we will be having a lot of problems, because imports, the money has to be inside the country. That's why the Atmanirbhar program of the Prime Minister is very, very relevant at this point of time. And you will be surprised that the government has taken very big leap in handling the recycling, because if we don't do it, we will have lot of climate problems. The environment will be great in danger. So therefore, I request to all of you that whatever is the end of products you have, do not go for its economic value. Please make sure that it is recycled in a more environment sound manner. So I would like to finish this, and anybody who has a question on the electronic waste, I'll be very happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ashok. And while I continue, I'll request that towards the end, we will also be taking audience questions. So please keep your questions handy. We will definitely be taking them up as well. And like you rightly said, Dr. Ashok, waste, the word itself needs to be rethought.
Yes.
It's every waste is not a waste; it's a resource, like we always say. Yeah. And that truly becomes resource in the concept of circular economy. In fact, in all the cities where we are doing these waste segregation projects, and the guys who segregate, we do not call them segregators. We call them resource recovery specialists. So while it is a better title, but also defines what actually they are doing, really, right? One of the things that I've seen with electronics, and I've been reading about it, especially there's a lot of movement on that in Europe. I feel a lot of time companies, the electronic manufacturers, they design products in a way that it's difficult to recycle. Number one. Second is, there is the concept of repairing has faded away over years, right? Apple, with the way the new editions that they launch, the older editions are poised to be, going out for recycling. Yes, recycling is the final answer, and because it has precious metals, and we all understand that. But the point is, the concept of repairing and reuse and all of that, refurbish, do you think that has faded away knowingly in just in the name of economic growth over the years? Or is that something that I'm, maybe could be wrong about?
You are absolutely right that the refurbishing, the moment the country goes on the digital platform, it will be very tough to recycle, to refurbish the products, like mobiles. Nobody wants to have the second or first generation mobile phones, because it does not help them to take care of the current situation, which is that they have to go for a 5G if they have to see certain videos, if they have to see certain things. The second hand, will only be able to help in tier 3 or 4 cities. So therefore, there is a demand for these products as well. But the refurbishing cost will go up, because if you would like to have small parts from the manufacturer, it will not be coming forthwith, because they immediately discontinue their production so that nobody can reuse it or refurbish it. Suppose if you have an Apple phone, and if you go to change the PCB or some part of it, you will not find it. So what will happen? It has to go for recycling. So these people have now started taking another initiatives by Apple particularly and the Dell particularly, that they would like to take it back their products and give you a good value which even the Kabadi cannot give you. So what will happen? They have taken initiatives, and the pricing will be done in such a manner that the products which are coming back to them, they will be able to take care of their extended producer responsibility target, so that they can give it to their recyclers who are engaged with them. So they can definitely take out the precious metals, the PCBs, which can be reused. There is no problem. There are certain sensors which can be reused by them. So I'm sure that the refurbishing will die its own time, no doubt about it. You cannot reuse it. Today, the child who is having a mobile phone would like to go to their parents and say, no, I don't want the refurbished, whether it is 10,000 bucks or 5,000. But in the laptops, it is possible that the people wanted to have second, third, fourth generation refurbished laptop. But year to come, it will be, the technology will take place in such a fashion that it will be plugged, and if it is not working, it will be thrown for recycling. The recycling and the circular economy is going to be a big, big business in this world, and I'm sure that in next decade, the billionaire will come from the recycling industry. Whether it is solid waste or whether electronic waste or plastic waste. You will see that. There was a time when the software in 2000 came and the billionaires were brought in. And it is a very innovative system of doing the recycling. It's very, very tough to recycle a air conditioner or a refrigerator, because refrigerator has a lot of gases which has to be taken care, because the refrigerated gases are very hazardous. So similarly, there are so many other metals which has to be recycled. Rare earths are there, which are to be taken in grams, and the grams cost you huge money. So the refurbishing will not be a future of any industry. The people have to go for recycling or to take the new material.
Sure.
Thank you, Ashish.
Thank you so much for elaborating on that, Doctor. And you gave a very good news for Binish and Ujjwal both. The future billionaires could be from the recycling industry, and I'm glad we have some young and serious entrepreneurs among us. I have a question for you. I think Abhinav, you can take this up. We have been talking about EPR a lot today, extended producer responsibility. So while assuming that the audience is already equipped with that knowledge at what EPR is, but what do you think, based on your experience with the government institutions and working maybe with brand owners, how can we make EPR really impactful? Because, for right now in India, EPR is applicable on plastic and electronics. Do you really think the kind of work that should be happening is happening? And if not, what could be the little changes that can be brought in by the government or the policy makers to make it really impactful?
Thanks,
See,
Ashish, for that
they have to come out with the policy of take back, and they have to make the producers responsible to make sure that their products are coming back to any manufacturer or to the service center, that this product is not working and it is not can be worked because their compressor is gone, or their PCB is gone, or their digital sensor are not working. So it will be the duty of the producers or the manufacturers that they have to have a very good policy of take back, and they have to have awareness programs among the users of these products. And the government has taken very stringent steps, like suppose if a producer does not comply with the targets, what will happen to them? They'll have to pay, which is coming. It is just the government has decided, the MOEF and the CPCB has decided that they will be putting a penalty on it. Suppose if you have a washing machine and that is, say for instance, 40 kg. Now they will be putting a 1200 rupees, and it means that 30 rupees per kg penalty has to be paid by the producer, and that money will go to the recycling initiatives and other environment programs which are being conducted by the Government of India. So the government is very serious, Ashish, that the recycling has to take place in this country, whether the producers or the users or the sellers or the retailers, whether it is Amazon or Flipkart, they have to bring back whenever the new equipment is sold to the extent of material they are selling. So that will go back to the recycling. So it's a very good initiative by the Government of India.
Completely agree with you, sir. Completely agree. Abhinav, your thoughts on this, please.
Yeah, so I have a very different point of view in that. You know, one thing which I believe is that India is at a trajectory where we have to balance economic growth with environmental sustainability. I think either of them are not an option, right? And in my view, and I have a very strong view on this, a surefire way to kill an economy is for government to get into everything. You know, and therefore I believe the government's role is to enable and regulate. And I disagree with Dr. Ashok on certain points, while broadly I agree. See, we have to let people do what they are competent at, right? And Apple might not, its core competency will never be recycling. Its core competency is design and research. And if we force companies to step outside their core competency, it will degrade their enterprise value, it will limit the value that they add to the economy, and that is harmful to our future generations as well. And therefore, the thing which needs to be done in EPR is, while yes, an obligation needs to be there, and I agree with the broader regulations, but what are the enabling systems we set up, right? So, for example, the good people that we have here who are working, that's their core competency. And we need to create those partnerships. We need to create those platforms where maybe some money is coming from these companies, where there are other systems, their expertise in marketing and brand building for that matter, so that they create more demand for recycled products. That's where their competencies could be leveraged. But I think the criticality is to create those partnerships. And I think more important, and maybe that will not be the most popular step, it is important for the government to take a step back on this and let the sector figure this out on their own. They should put timelines at that, they should enable, but I think it will ultimately up to creating partnerships, creating platforms, and as more and more entrepreneurs, more and more firms start working in this space, we will see those partnerships coming up. So for example, I already know that a lot of FMCG companies are partnering with recycling companies to say that, look, we are creating so much of packaging waste. You are in the business of managing that packaging waste. Why don't we work together where I partly fund products which are technically recyclable but not commercially recyclable, they become commercially feasible and so on and so forth. And that, in my view, is the way forward, rather than pummeling the industry with overburdening regulations. That's my view.
That's a lovely thought, and I completely agree with you, Abhinav.
I would like to bring one more facts about the Government of India's initiative, that every electronic product they are considering very carefully. They have already done in the Ministry of Steel that in infrastructure, any steel which they are using it must have 25% of the recycled material. It means that it cannot be the virgin steel, it has to be the recycled steel as well, which is coming out of the recycled material. So similarly, in every product, the government is thinking like a washing machine, it has to have some recycled plastic tubs inside, and they are also thinking to have the recycled scrap material which is coming out of the existing end of the life equipments. and also the wires, the various products must have 25%. It will be considered as a green initiatives by the government of India, and you will see that every product will be written that it contains 10%, 25% or 30% recycled product or the raw material used in manufacturing this product. So on the basis of that particular percentage, the government will give the incentives to the producers. So this is going to be the next initiative shortly coming in, it is in the way. So it will happen with all the producer manufacturers of electronic goods.
That's definitely a welcome step, I think, to motivate the producers to boost recycling efforts. And that's where, like Abhinav rightly pointed out, these partnerships are going to come in handy. I think the more partnerships, and also, it's an easy way for the producer to have their eggs in multiple baskets, to tie up with multiple people and try out new things. So I've seen with a lot of FMCGs, they are trying, even though recently CPCB imposed huge fines on companies like Pepsi, Coca-Cola and Bisleri, because they're still not meeting their targets. But I think that was just example setting for the entire industry, because if something happens to them, the entire industry kind of takes cognizance. So I think while they also need to boost their efforts, it's to the recycling initiatives of the lines of Ujjwal and Binish, who are here with us today, that they need to scale up, they need to be supported, and again, because they need to be adapted into the ecosystem very smoothly. Otherwise, we will just be left with those old players, and because we want new blood, new energy to keep coming into this domain. So I have a question, and I think maybe Ujjwal or Binish can take it up. When we were talking about channelizing different kinds of plastic waste to companies like yours. So the collector plays the most important role. So even in the case of FMCGs or the producers, the brand owners, they make sure they tie up with different collectors, or like we call under EPR, PROs, producer responsibility organizations. So the collectors, how can the processes be made more financially sustainable for the collectors in order to be working with recycling companies like yours?
So I think the first thing here comes is actually following the whole cycles. Every person involved, may it be the government, may it be the consumers, the recyclers or the segregators and consumers, obviously. I like to call it like as a milk bottle system. Reason is, हम लोग पहले milk bottles were used. Now we are using bags, right? So technology evolved हुआ. But what has happened is this, as consumers, let's first talk about consumers. Government today will say, okay, be compulsory, you have to put it in glass bottles only. Milk bottles, milk should always come in glass bottles. But now when the producer who is manufacturing or producing those products, they will say, okay, ठीक है, हम लोग 12 रुपए का जो milk था, we will make it 20 rupees. Because ultimately they are also, it's about their survival. So वो दो chain follow हुआ. Now when the consumer comes, they will say, okay, अरे भाव बढ़ गए, right? There is always a cost involved when there is a change involved, right? Most of us will welcome it. Okay, it's a good initiative, ठीक है, let's go back to the glass milk bottles as they are getting recycled. But when there will be one person who will break that chain, हमारा बाजू वाला अगर वो मिल्क बॉटल की जगह वो कहीं से कुछ भी एक XYZ जगह से he brings out a plastic bottle or a plastic one time single use plastic bottle, that chain will break, because then we will think ये हमारा ड्यूटी थोड़ी ना है, वो बाजू वाला तो कर ही रहा है ना, हम तो पूरी environment के लिए we are doing quite enough. So that breaks the chain. Now when that chain breaks, when a consumer stops understanding the importance of all the efforts and everyone, not just the consumer but also the other two, the segregators face a huge problem, as I said, because kachra aa to raha hai, but either it's not of the right amount or it is so much unsegregated that it becomes very difficult to incentivize or to send it to the next person. So the easiest thing they do is, ठीक है, ये हमने इसमें से वैल्यू निकाल लिया, अभी बाकी का जो है डाल दो ना, अभी कौन सा रेगुलेशन है अभी. That is where I would like to talk about my company's initiative in this manner. एनीथिंग यू कॉल इट एज अ कूड़ा, अगर आपको लगता है आपके इंडस्ट्री का वेस्ट है या समथिंग दैट इज कम्प्लीटली इवन मिक्सड अप, वी टेक इट. We do not mind taking it because we are adding value to it. Now when we are taking it, when it is in a quantum, when we start taking it in a quantum from let's say an XYZ segregator, भले वो mixed है, उसको वो कुछ नहीं कर रहा है, yet we are incentivizing them. The reason being is we are creating products out of it. Now that comes to the core idea of how we make money. It is very important for every one of us out here to understand there is no such thing called here one-sided social impact only. It has to be a balance of all. So it is a micro social enterprise where what we follow is this: instead of having one huge factory, we have multiple factories across, located in different locations, thus bringing down the logistics, thus making it more valuable for the product to be converted and adding a commercial product. जब तक एक material will not have value, then how much efforts have gone into making that material, no one would want, or no one would take much more interest. It may be of a small time, maybe an NGO doing so, but it will not be long lasting. It will be more like a project than a continuous effort. So everyone involved has to be getting something out of it. So when the product is developed, we ensure that that is one thing that we do is everyone involved gets a certain credit system from the product that is developed.
Definitely, and to add on to your point of, see, even for NGOs, not NGOs and NPOs are two different things. But even for an NGO, for it to sustain, the biggest of the NGOs that have sustained in the world, not just in India, is because they were performing on the triple bottom line. If you are just relying on donations or CSR things, those are one-time fuels, or you can say catalysts.
Yes.
Eventually, you have to set up systems, which puts bread on the table at the end of the day, right?
True.
So totally agree that that initiative of recycling has to be performing on the triple bottom line, which I mean is environment friendly, socially inclusive, and financially beneficial.
Yes.
Only then you will be able to sustain
Correct.
in the market.
Can I just add, Ashish? Yeah, I think I really appreciate that point, what you said about social enterprises. Because often when we talk about sectors such as waste, sanitation, etc., I think everybody talks about the word social, but people forget the word enterprise. No sector in this world has ever flourished, and taking nothing away from the very good work that a lot of NGOs and NPOs do, but sustainably something happening in the long term is only possible when it's enterprise-based models, right? And I therefore 100% agree. What sometimes we tend to forget, when regulations, and just taking your example of the milk bottle versus the milk pouch, what a lot of times regulators and market players forget that what is the value of that 8 rupee. For me, who has been fortunate enough to be earning well, it might not mean much. But for somebody who is a domestic worker who has to feed a 2-year-old child, that means the world. And what is fundamentally needs to change, that the systems we are setting up today are not equitable. They are inclusive but not equitable. And there's a very, very fine difference between the two. Where does a majority of our waste come from in our cities? If we look at the large cities, more than 40% of the waste comes from what we call as the urban poor households. And by urban poor households, what we mean, the definition rather than income based, because the cost of living could be different in different cities, we say that their net household savings is less than 2% of their annual income. And therefore what we say there essentially is what in US they call it living paycheck to paycheck. For them, every rupee that increases their cost of living is directly impacting what they are able to provide for their children, what they are able to provide for themselves. And therefore business models which are equitable and inclusive. I think we have figured out a lot of the inclusive part, but the equitable part somewhere we have missed doing it. For example, Noida, a city where both Ashish and we work, there used to be a flat tariff for collecting waste from households. Now they have made it a step tariff basis, size of the household or the areas which they are in, which is a step towards being equitable, because a person who is living in a high-end condo can afford to pay 1,500 rupees per month for waste collection, whereas let's say the tariff otherwise would be 100 or 200 rupees, whereas somebody living in a small slum area in a one-bedroom house might not be able to afford even 10 rupee a month. So what is the amount of money we pay that is just the right amount to ensure that it's creating responsibility but not creating burden on the consumer? And therefore that enterprise as well as equitable is what, and I 100% agree with you when you said that we have to look at what is the affordability and what is creating the right incentives for somebody. For example, and incentive we spoke about, a 10 rupee might not be incentive enough for somebody to segregate, but a 1 rupee might be enough and more incentive for somebody else to segregate. So what is the incentive structure that we create? And there are a lot of mathematical models, a lot of econometric models which are going behind this research as to how do we make some of these models more equitable. And I think that's the piece where a lot of work has not happened. And I think once that we mix that enterprise model with equity, I think that will be the winning game, honestly. And I believe a lot of entrepreneurs such as yourself are thinking towards it, and once we figure that out, I think that will be really the game changer, what will happen in this space.
Definitely. I think that has tied in really well to the concept that we are also trying to talk about. Whatever integrated waste management or solving the plastic waste crisis, eventually it boils down to partnerships, triple bottom line, and also these equitable enterprises. In India, it's still a newer concept, but I think in the other parts of the world, we have this concept of sustainable social enterprises who are also not only making money but also taking care of the planet as well as the society. So I hope, and again, it's not just about that new organizations have to become socially enterprise. I think the existing top organizations are already taking that angle of becoming more sustainable and measuring themselves on the triple bottom line and not just the financials. So, and it's not just that they are lot of them are motivated, but a lot of them also have no choice anymore because the consumer is becoming conscious. And if you really want to be, the big brand of tomorrow, you really have to care about the people and the environment. Otherwise, the awareness is on the rise among the people. I think I have a question for Shalini. Shalini, I know ICC is doing a lot of good work in the field of education, sensitization. You recently launched a course as well, like you talked about. When you talk about circularity, we have spoken about plastics, we have spoken about electronics, but I want to pick your brains on textile. Like, do you come across that as a challenge from the people you work with? Because in our domain, we hear that a lot, that channelizing textile waste is a huge problem. Because and most of it is still going to landfills as per the studies that I have done. So please throw some light on that.
Thank you so much for bringing up textiles, because I think when we are talking about integrated waste management, textiles play a very important role out there. I have personally worked with a textile company in Europe that was a producer of non-denims, and then I worked in India as well. So textiles, yes, it is a major challenge, and when I work with the people on the ground, I see that when it comes to garments, there are a lot of superstitions that are also driven in the industry. So India is majorly driven by the fact that मेरे बच्चे का कपड़ा मैं किसी और को नहीं दे सकती हूँ. It has to go to the waste. So when I work with females, this is one major idea that I get to see and hear. Whereas in Europe, there is a lot of awareness of increasing the longevity of the garment, the textile as a whole. So there are certain measures that they have taken, and the measures include two kind of approach. One is increasing the tensile strength of the fiber itself, so that the cloth remains in the lifespan for a longer time. The other one is, once you have a product, how will you increase the lifespan of that product? So there are a lot of product as a service models that have come up in Europe. In India, we still have a tendency that even if marriage, which is a lifetime function, we splurge lakhs and lakhs on one costume that we wear, and if we throw up an idea of renting out that costume, it really sounds awkward to the families. And how many families would today adopt it? It's very, very rare fraction. Whereas I think this is something that we should do. Another example is a newborn baby. in India we splurge, and what statistics say is that in the first 2 years of a child, the size changes almost 12 times. And that is the kind of amount we splurge on that young child who's just 2 years old. And we keep on buying all these clothes. We are not thinking about what will happen to the clothes later. If we have our own baby, maybe in the family, maybe we can share the cloth, but not beyond that. Ultimately, all that cloth lands in the landfill. Donations is a very recent phenomena that has started, but I don't know how many people would still share. I mean, I would be glad to know if someone can share the statistics with me. How many percentage of people would still like to give away their children's clothes to someone else? Is again a superstition which is driving India. But yes, I think the urban market, certain models which are rental models, selling cloth as a service, not as a product, are definitely will be advantageous, will gain some traction in the coming time, because the fashion is changing. The fast fashion introduces, I was reading this report the other day, there were 3 to 4 seasons in a year, and now fast fashion claims to have 52 seasons in a year. So that's the kind of change that we are seeing. The law of obsolescence that we were talking about in technology and the electronic products is also built in textiles. So lesser life, frequent changing is something that has been built in our mindsets now. The lifestyle changes is something that we are driven by. So yes, it's important, but India, I think, needs to see very challenging and enterprising solutions to this problem. And that is where circularity plays a very important role. How to bring in, and when we talk about the end of life cycle of the product, another very important thing is how we talk about the products, the textile being a pure textile, as we call it, as a mono material, they could say, so that it is easy to recycle. I think companies needs to, the textile industry needs to also start thinking about it. So that's, I think, just a beginning in India, but a lot needs to be done, particularly when it comes to the textile industry. There are no EPR regulations, there are no end of life cycle legislations here, and that is why this industry will still take a long time in India to adapt circularity than otherwise.
I was hinting towards that point, and you rightly mentioned it, that we need EPR on textile waste as well. Like, we cannot have these global brands continue to pollute our planet, because the fast fashion is also bringing in this thing, the culture of use and throw, right? Ideally, when you will buy clothes in the past, they'll last for 5 years, 10 years. Now within 6 months, the condition becomes such that you are forced to dispose of such clothes. Binish, you want to say something?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to add to the textile, because we do a lot of textile waste recycling as well. We have technology that we have developed out of textile waste. But not just the post-consumer waste needs to be focused upon, but also the post-production waste.
Yes.
Because that's a majority of the textile that is actually also ending up in the landfills. What's happening is the textile manufacturers, with the increasing demand of fast fashion, more production is happening and more complex the fabrics are becoming, and that's resulting in a lot of the waste that is not being recycled. So what we are doing is now we are doing specific solutions. So it's very important for also us to understand that waste is not equal everywhere. So when I'm talking about textile waste, there will be more than, I can say, 1500 different types of just one type of waste, because every industry, I'm talking about very much post production waste, every industry produces a different type of waste that is being generated from their processing, and that's something that we are also now focusing on, and that's one of the very I feel like an integral part that needs to be incorporated into this circular cycle as well, considering the waste that is being generated, because a lot of focus is not being given. So any entrepreneur out here, I would say, start researching or start investing your time also into understanding the waste that are being generated post-production, especially in textile. There's a lot of scope out there.
Definitely. I think a lot of work has already been happening in the space of plastic and electronic, and textile is still untapped, if I would say. Yeah. And a lot of potential in there, not from just economical perspective, but also helping preventing it to go to landfills. So Binish, let me give you a scenario. Let's say, if someone is segregating textile waste, and let's say maybe Gurgaon, right? They're segregating it, keeping it. and they're collecting it from, let's say, 1,000 households. How do they make sure that they can leverage your technology to get their waste recycled?
So that is actually very much important, as I said, mentioned as a micro social enterprise, decentralization. It does not need to come all the way till Gujarat to be recycled. We have existing infrastructures. It's not a complex system. There is no rocket science involved into a lot of ways that we consider are non-recyclable, but it's just about the logistics aspect. That's why a lot of places, so not just textile, we have even right now we are working with cafes where we are recycling the coffee grounds. Now, although it is, it can be converted into manure, but most of it is ending up in the landfills. Why? Because of the system of it not reaching in the right bin. So what we are doing is we are converting them into crockery. We are trying to put value to a waste where when someone will have a look at it, they'll be able to imagine, okay, this is made out of waste. Now coming back to the topic of how someone collecting in Gurgaon can do so and ensure that this is we have done something with the PP. We have put up bins where people are collecting the face masks and the PPE kits that they are utilizing. And once it is collected, it's going to the nearest recycler whom we have partnered with. So that person we have lended out our technology to. He will convert them into products, mostly bricks because of the quantum of it, and they are being used to create cost-effective houses, which will help the ones who are in need get a cost-effective house. So ensuring that the system is being followed is very important. Similar example I would like to give for the salons. Now we are all aware that hair is being converted into wigs or brushes in the beauty industry. But what about the salons that are operating in a small town such as Valsad? It's very difficult to collect that, and so that's also one of the reasons it's ending up in the landfill. So what we did was we collected waste from those salons. We did like a small pilot scale project where we collected the waste from those salons and converted them into artificial wood. That is also one of our product from that same human hair once it was sanitized, and we actually gave them as a furniture bag. So it was although a very small project, but this was just to impart that idea about how nothing is useless in this world. What can be a waste to use someone's asset, and it can be your own asset if you go to see. So creating those concepts on a larger scale is very much important, especially when the majority of the waste actually is not only coming from the metro cities, but also from the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, which is way more because there are less options of recycling available in those areas.
Yes, completely agree. There's more leakage of waste in tier 2 and 3 towns. Tons of examples, especially in Uttar Pradesh, where we see that the waste is dumped openly into the drains and the rivers. So, but yeah, glad to hear about the initiatives that you have been doing in different pockets. And the reason I asked this question is so whosoever watches later as well, they know that they can get in touch with you and you can connect them to the nearest recycler. Because while I'm personally a fan of just doing grounded talks a lot, because right after this we want to get into action. So while we have gathered so many people from different domains, the purpose is there has to be some action happening on this, right after the panel discussion. So what I'll do is I'll reserve my questions now, otherwise I'll keep going and the time has already passed. So I'll open it up to the audience for any questions before we put on the concluding thoughts. Okay, we have a question there, so if you could just get on the mic.
Yeah. Hello. Yeah, so my question, I'm Vaibhav from Bangalore basically. I work as a director in Infineon Technologies. So my question is about medical waste, right? In Bangalore, at least in various apartments, we have a mandatory policy to segregate stuff, and dry waste, green bin, red bin, plastics, all do get separated. But we have a problem with medical waste, it's pretty ad hoc, it comes once in a while. So how are we doing on medical waste recycling?
So when we are talking about medical waste, biomedical waste is also subcategorized into a lot of factors. Ones which are, for example, the recent one being, as I said, PP, right? PP at first was considered as a biomedical waste and hence it was mandatory to be incinerated. But then after understanding the virus and how it spreads through the material itself, it was declassified into being treated in the right manner and then being used as a household, domestic waste that can eventually either be recycled or ended up in the landfill. Now, the majority of right now they are not working on it. For example, if you go to see in European countries, now they are using that biomedical waste such as the sanitary pads, the nappies, everything that is the diapers, into actually pallets which are being used to make the roofing for households in US and Europe. So there is technologies out there, but the problem in India happens is this, the quantum as well. Because when we are seeing over there, they have specific segregation methods where they are specifically segregating the biomedical waste. Now here, so much of quantum is being generated that it is becoming very difficult at the source itself to do so. Thus, there is a lot of work that is required for the Indian aspect to reach to the level where right now many other countries are. That being said, the syringes, especially with the new now the vaccines that are coming up, we already started working on how to recycle them into different products. So there are many entrepreneurs which I know are working on the similar fronts, especially in the biomedical waste factor, and then probably they would be right now on pilot scale. Hence, we are not hearing about it. But sooner, definitely, when you start understanding the types of waste is when we'll have a solution for this.
Sure. Thank you, Binish, for sharing. Okay, we have one more question out there, so I'll request you to please come to the mic.
Thank you. Hello. Yeah, my name is Nayan Raut, and I am running a company which helps the petrochemical segment. My question is regarding the chemical waste rather than recycling. It's a disposal part of it. I have worked extensively in Europe, and what I have observed is that most of the European companies, they transfer the waste to the smaller countries like Bangladesh and India. But if I have a use case where we have so many industries in, let's say in Maharashtra or Gujarat, GIDC, you have mentioned about the textile waste. So the actual manufacturing process creates a lot of waste, and it's always sent in the air or in the water. So what is a business case in which we could help kind of businesses to, reduce that?
So that is so every type, as I said earlier as well, every industry produces a different type of waste. Hence, I would like to say it in 3 phases for you to analyze first. So the first would be actually understanding how the waste is being produced, how much it is. So identification, so I classify the process into 3 manners. First is identification. Once you have identified, important is how you segregate it, or how does it reach to either the recycling facility. So it can be 2 options: either you set it up right there as a part of your process where it does not come out as a process but as a product. A lot of companies, although they are very enthusiastic about getting rid of their waste, do not want to invest into the capital that goes into making the product out of it. So it then lies to the people who are already in the particular field. So hence it has to be understood that how that waste reaches to those people, whether if it's as a GIDC, right? In a small, let's say in a GIDC right now, what's happening is it's all being sent either to be incinerated or to be disposed of, and because it's a chemical waste. Now, first, under Article 11 of the hazardous waste categories of CPCB, we need to also understand why have they reached there. They were incorporated years ago. Some of them can be declassified into, if they have the right products, if they are inert, if they have been not producing any gases out of it. So understanding from the person who is manufacturing them is very much important, and it's all based upon the customization के आपका waste कितना निकल रहा है, उसके basis पे क्या product बन सकता है. We are producing a very small quantum, but you are expecting, let's for example, if you are producing around a ton of waste every day, but you are expecting it to be used as bricks, it is not possible, because you will be able to make only 2,000, 3,000 bricks a day. That's not even 0.1% of the total requirement from the customer. So it's also very important how you analyze all those things and then produce. So the first would be what we call as waste auditing, to understand how much waste is being produced, and then we can provide solutions. So we have a system in place and we can help you with that.
Sorry, you want to say something? No. Yes.
And I think apart from what Binish was saying about thinking about how waste can be recycled, I think it has to be coupled with the first R of the 3R principle, right? Because a lot of chemical waste, which specifically your question was, is actually not recyclable. You know, it is toxic, hazardous, some waste which, at least today, the technology doesn't exist to recycle it, reuse it. And therefore, at some point, we have to start considering, do we need to really acid wash our jeans in the textile industry? Do we really need to have technologies in automobile where so much of paint is wasted? Can we come up with more efficient solutions? Because efficiency over there is also direct cost saving, right? If you're using, instead of 100 liters of paint, if you're using 98 liters of paint, it's a 2 liter of savings, and therefore is the capex that you're investing in it makes it worth your while. And therefore, I think apart from just looking at what do I do with my waste, eventually we have, because truth be told, today there are regulations on how you handle it, right? It's just not incentivizing manufacturers or companies enough to reduce them as well. Because eventually, trust me, if we keep on growing even at 4% per year, despite of good people like Binish and Ujjwal, we will be running out of space to manage our waste, you know, irrespective of how much we do, unless we reduce at least by 5 to 10% per year. You know, so therefore, somewhere that reduction element has to come in, especially with pieces such as chemical waste, etc.
Thank you, Abhinav. And I think this point of waste audit that you mentioned, Binish, so we have recently done, and it's the most important step before you recommend any solution, because with even every 10 kilometers, how the country changes, you know, the nature of the waste also changes here very drastically. You know, so when we did the waste audits at city level, like, you know, last year we did it in Saharanpur versus Hisar, and now a couple of cities in Odisha, drastic differences. And, you know, that's the first and the most important, because we have solution providers for each kind of waste, almost all, except the inert and the non-recyclable. But, you know, wherever you're looking to implement any kind of solution, I'll recommend getting a waste audit done by an expert. Yes, we have a question there, so you could please come on the mic.
Thanks. My name is Mukesh Malhotra, and I'm the CEO for Bihar Sharif Smart City. Now, you know, as a part of this integrated solid waste management, though we are not taking this in a holistic manner, but yes, a little bit with different pieces. Now, we have already, you know, provided this bins to almost the entire city, you know, the 70,000 into 2, you know, the dry and the waste, we are doing that. Trying our best, you know, the baby steps have started in terms of even the messages to the tipper which comes in the morning or so, and even the hoardings, etc. But I know that in the way the city is, it's just a passage of a few weeks or so, those bins starts getting used for, you know, for the grain storage of the grains, etc. This is what I've seen in the tier 3 and the tier 4 cities or so. In spite of the fact that, you know, from a smart city perspective, we're trying to do all this. I mean, this is the best. I'm not very sure what else that we need to do on that, in terms of, or even the Nukkad plays or so that we plan to start on that. What is it that you think so, you know, especially in these things? Gurgaon also from, I mean, I stayed in Gurgaon for long, and they're also, you know, kind of saying we are trying to do that one. But in the tier 3 or 4 cities or so, in spite of doing all this, providing it through the Nagar Nigam or so, how do you think the things can really change over here? I mean, it's a tough challenge that we are facing.
See, I'll have the panelists take it up as well, but personally,
Yeah.
from you know, the recent work that we have seen, your challenge is a very natural one.
Yeah.
That tells that, you know, definitely you're trying to make waste segregation a reality, and, you know, asking people to change their behaviors.
Yeah.
But sir, I think the key is, you know, whatever infrastructure you deploy, that's a plus. But the primary thing you need is the you know, an effective IEC program, wherein the behavioral changes are brought into the people. By IEC, I'm referring to information, education, and communication. And that is something that does not have to happen, because, see, you know, I've seen various cities doing IEC work in pockets, and especially, you know, near to the Swachh Sarvekshan, honestly. IEC is something that needs to happen throughout the year. You know, every household, like, let's imagine you have 50 wards. So every house in every ward needs to be, you know, touched upon at least twice a month, you know, with this team that you set up. Simran from my team is here. This exactly that's what we have achieved in Hisar. I'm not bragging. These are backed up by numbers. We have Excel sheets that we maintain. We're visiting every house at least once a week. We are doing even more. Only then we could achieve 90% segregation over a period of 6 months. We didn't give them bins. They were the people who were keeping everything in one polythene mixed together. These are the same people who have now got a cardboard box to keep their dry waste, and separately they are keeping their wet waste. And they are the ones who have started questioning if the waste is not collected in a segregated format. But that behavioral see, like I was saying earlier today as well during the presentation, it's a cultural change that we need to bring. It's not in our culture to segregate. हमें नहीं पता है कि मूंगफली का दाना कहाँ जाएगा, हमें ये नहीं पता कि coconut shell कहाँ पे जाएगा. We assume and we send. Abhi, I think someone was giving an example, right? कि someone walked out of a coffee shop और खाली जो glass होता है coffee वाला, they threw it in the wet waste, right?
Yeah.
They threw it in the wet waste box because they said, oh, ये तो गीला है. But eventually that cup is recyclable and it's it's disposable and it is dry waste. But that lot of times that education is not there. So my point is education, yes, through different methods, door to door, different methods, ask them questions, educate them, but make it a recurring exercise. The moment you stop that, it will be back to normal, and the entire initiatives, you'll spend crores of rupees in setting up recycling plants, collection infrastructure, setting up vehicles, but that small cost of yours should not be ignored. That is a recurring cost that you need to incur.
So that's something that we're planning to do. So maybe for 6 months or so, I don't know for how much we can really contain on that. Resource constraints also on that one. So that's one of the thoughts which is there, that at least for a 6 months or so we can have an agency which can really help on that one. But yeah.
You're definitely thinking in the right direction, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Let me just add to that.
Yeah.
You're right. Sometimes IC is what you require continuously. But those of us familiar with the sanitation sector know that there's a concept of behavior triggers. And IC is essential. But oftentimes we treat IC as what we know as brand marketing. Right? It's about behavior triggers. And we are partnering with Johns Hopkins University in identifying what are the neurological triggers for people to start practicing segregation. And I'll give you an example. A community which runs cow shelters in Ghazipur, they were generating almost 150 kgs of plastic waste a day, and they were just refusing to segregate it despite all the education. And we showed them a video where a cow was operated upon and there was a lot of plastic in her stomach. And one day that just changed. The next day they started segregating. So I think there's a lot of work to be done in terms of behavior triggers which we are missing, and that is a one-time effort. But there's a larger effort, and therefore sometimes we don't spend on it. Behavior triggers with follow-up, even a moderate level IEC, which tends to work most, and in the long run is the most resource efficient as well. And you rightly said there are resource constraints around this. And therefore I would also urge you to look at partnering with institutions which specialize not just in IEC, but identifying and implementing those behavior triggers. And unlike the waste management sector, sanitation sector, there are a lot of good examples, there's a lot of body of work, but we need to replicate that for the waste management sector as well. Government is working on this concept of, in sanitation, there's this community-led total sanitation. There are like a bunch of tools, how you sort of trigger people to stop defecating in the open, start using a toilet. So they're now coming up with CLT, SLWM. So how you do solid and liquid waste management, how do you trigger community-led total solid and liquid waste management. I think that's something to think about probably.
Completely agree.
Sure,
Especially that point of integrated. I think someone who's not just going and driving behavior changes, but also involved in the overall waste management process can ideally give better suggestions and relate to them better, because they can tell them, see, if you do not segregate, this is what is the challenge we are facing. Eventually, IC is an enabler of better collection, transport and recycling eventually. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much. We have one question. You can come on the mic.
Good morning, everyone. Am I audible to all of you? I think it's still morning. So my founder has already introduced me, like I guess twice. I'm Simran from Green Dream Foundation. So the question is for you, Shalini ma'am. Like, it really interests me when you told that how women are still superstitious about giving the clothes of their children. But back at Hisar, the project that we are running, so we have successfully made them aware through our IEC team effort that they've been giving their babies like new newborns, 5-year-old, 6-year-old clothes to us. But again, of course, the way you said, it comes down to the same line that, there's no EPR, there's no bottom line defined for a cloth life. So we do have that, but this might be a question properly, but this is just a suggestion. Like, I come from this millennial age, like a 24-year-old. So we have these platforms on Instagram and things like that where people are upcycling things from the clothes, like making earrings or making headgears, hairbands. So do you think that as an NGOs, like it could be a solution to like tie up with such upcyclers, not recycle in particular? Of course, it should be there, and recycling has its own impact, coming from same sector of waste management. So could upcycling be a temporary issue for now for the textile management of waste?
Thank you for bringing up that question. That's very, very interesting what you're asking me. See, we have seen a lot of upcyclers coming, be it in the paper industry or in the textile industry. I would not try to degrade their value, but if I have to judge the overall circularity of the product, I would still say that upcycling could be a temporary solution to the change that's happening. It can motivate people to kind of use the waste that they are generating. But I don't think these kind of little initiatives that we are doing are enough to kind of recycle the entire product. So let's say you were saying about making some earrings out of some waste, or headgears, or maybe now masks. A lot of people have started doing that. I also come across a lot of people who are using this paper quilling to make very innovative products, right? But what they are doing is ultimately they don't tend to realize that while they are upcycling paper, which is a recyclable thing, by the way, otherwise they are actually downscaling the value by putting additives on the paper, by putting some paint on the paper, which even they are not sure which chemicals it is composed of. But again, having said that, that paper could have been actually recycled otherwise, which is now being downscaled. So the domain of circular economy actually talks about upscaling the value of the product, if not upscaling, at least keeping the value of the product as it is. These little initiatives of what we call upscaling, maybe downscaling the value, but I think these are good enough to begin with to make people realize that there is a value to the product. But I don't see them as a regular initiatives that could actually take on for a very long time, if I'm able to answer your question.
Definitely, ma'am. But I still think that I go by the idea of downscaling them, because adding colors or maybe putting a hoop in the earring like the one I'm wearing right now. So I do understand that. But do you still agree with the fact that, making women aware specifically, because fortunately, unfortunately in India, women are the one, who are segregating waste, and they're taking those opportunities, they're the only sole bearers to do that. And if they can come out and actually give clothes, so do you think that awareness can play a huge role in this whole direction of textile?
Yes, for awareness, yes, it is very important. For changing that mindset, it's really, really important. And I think that's why I said it is happening in the metro cities, definitely. I see a little bit of these initiatives coming up in the, you're working in Hisar, Ashish, I'm sure you would know. A lot of women, particularly in Hisar and Saharanpur area, they actually tend to recycle their clothes as well. So, which is a good habit. But we have lost this habit of recycling or reusing their cloth, textile particularly, has completely faded away in the metros. So, in the urban area, if you are talking about this initiative, I think this is a very good start to break the chain, to break the mentality that we have that we cannot use it for any other purpose. So I think these are good ideas. I would also suggest again, maybe some kind of rental models of their products is something that I am looking forward to, some kind of an enterprise that could come up and also work into the rental models, because again, it is important to break the thought process that we are running up with. So I think that yes, that's very, very important.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think awareness efforts along with social enterprises that can create solutions out of the textile waste is again a huge opportunity that lies untapped. So I think for remaining questions, I'll request, because we have run out of time, we'll all be available for questions right after this.
Ashish, there is a young child in the audience. If I'm sorry, if you can take up that question in the second row.
Okay, let's take that question, please.
Hello everyone, my name is Rudra Jaiswal. Today I am asking that we know all about that recycling, not use plastics, but in exhibition also we are using plastic bottles. So how we can reduce it?
Very well. And I think this is the first thing I noticed when I came up here. So there are changes that are happening. If you go to other convention centers, you will find that they have introduced glass jugs. So now they've started keeping glass jugs and glasses, not even disposable glasses, but glasses which could be actually reused. So this is, I think, a point for the organizers here, that we can replace the plastic here with something that is reusable and rewashable. Thank you so much.
Thanks for the question. मैंने इस चक्कर में पानी नहीं पिया 2 घंटे से यार. So anyway, thank you. I'll take it later. Just a second. So see, young gentlemen, see, you have a very good question. While this particular plastic bottle is avoidable, you know, here we can apply the R of reduce. But overall, we are surrounded by plastic. Your phone is plastic. Your lanyard has plastic, right? One initiative that Smart Cities took last year, these cards used to be wrapped up in plastic. So they got rid of that. There's always a step in the right direction. And like she rightly pointed out, a lot of conventions have already started using these jars. But let's understand that single-use plastic is the problem. Overall plastic is not the problem. So yeah, PET bottle is a single-use plastic. But otherwise, almost everything that we have around us is made out of plastic. This mic is made out of plastic. But if I do not recycle it, it will end up in the oceans and the landfill. So let's understand that. But kudos to you. I'm sure you will come out to be a future change maker of our country. Thank you. And for remaining questions, because now we have completely run out of time, we will all be available for questions, I hope, for next 10-15 minutes. So we'll be happy to talk to you, exchange business cards if you are okay with that during the COVID times. Otherwise, we can have a chat, any questions that you have. For now, I think you want to put up the closing thoughts.
I'm sorry, because we've had a very interactive and very interesting session. Audience can't have enough of you speakers. Thank you for your invaluable thoughts and educating us so much more on waste management. But our speakers for the other session are waiting, so we'll have to take a break here. And I would request Mr. Ashish Sachdeva to felicitate the speakers with a small memento on behalf of Exhibitions India. We'll start with Ms. Shalini Goyal Bhalla, Advisor, Sustainability and Circular Economy. Can we all have a round of applause for all our speakers? Dr. Abhinav Akhilesh, Director, Human and Social Services, KPMG in India. Mr. Ujjwal Desai, Managing Director, Lucro Plasticycle Private Limited. Dr. Binish Desai, Recycle Man of India. Dr. Ashok Kumar, Vice Chairman, Greenscape. I would request my colleague, Mr. Ashish Ramchandani, Head Smart Cities, Exhibitions India Group, to please come on stage and present the memento to Mr. Ashish Sachdeva.